Welcome to Beekeeping Today podcast presented by Bee Culture. Beekeeping Today podcast is your source for beekeeping news, information, and entertainment. I'm Jeff Ott.
And I'm Kim Flatham.
Hey, Jeff and Kim. Today's sponsor is Global Patties. They're a family-operated business that manufactures protein supplement patties for honeybees. It's a good time to think about honeybee nutrition. Feeding your hives protein supplement patties will ensure that they produce strong and healthy colonies by increasing brood production and overall honey flow. Now is a great time to consider what type of patty is right for your area and your honeybees. Global offers a variety of standard patties as well as custom patties to meet your needs. No matter where you are, Global is ready to serve you out of their manufacturing plants in Airdrie, Alberta, and in Butte, Montana, or from distribution depots across the continent. Visit them today at www.globalpatties.com.
Hey, thanks, Sherry. We really appreciate our sponsors. Without their support, we would have a very difficult time bringing you the podcast on a weekly basis. With that, thanks to Bee Culture Magazine for continuing their presenting sponsorship of this podcast. Bee Culture's been the magazine for American beekeeping since 1873. Subscribe to Bee Culture today, and while you're there, check out Bee Culture's Your First 3 Years, a quarterly magazine for beginning beekeepers. We also want to thank 2 Million Blossoms as sponsor of this episode. 2 Million Blossoms is a quarterly magazine dedicated to protecting all pollinator insects. Learn more on our Season 2, Episode 9 podcast with editor and our co-host, Kirsten Trainer, and from visiting www.2millionblossoms.com, and that is with a number 2. Hey, everybody, thanks for joining us. Hey, Kim, happy Labor Day.
Yeah, I thought there was supposed to be a holiday, Jeff. I'm working here. What's going on?
Yeah, well, it's Labor Day. We're a little late in getting the podcast out, but folks will get it on Monday, as we promised. And we're recording it in the morning, and folks will get it this afternoon, so we can listen to it on their drive into work Tuesday. Hey, so how your bees doing? We've talked about BMD website and what a great resource that is for beekeepers. And what about calling a veterinarian? Have you ever called a veterinarian for your bees?
Yeah, that's a really small animal vet, I guess. No, the bees are doing good. The goldenrod has just started this week. And of course, it's going full blast, and we had, I'm going to say, 1.5 to 2 inches of rain last night. It really poured.
Oh, wow.
So it'll take a while to dry out today if it does dry. It's supposed to rain all day, so who knows. But the rest of the week's supposed to be nice, supposed to be warm, supposed to be good goldenrod honey week.
Wow. Well, that's one reason why we're running a little behind this week is I was busy extracting honey all day on Saturday, and so I got that all done. I actually got some blackberry honey this year, so
really?
I'm kind of excited about that. Yeah, that's about the only flow we have, and I didn't have anything capped until after the blackberry, so I'm pretty sure it's all blackberry honey.
Wow!
So I'm pretty happy about that.
Yeah, that's nice honey.
Yeah,
it's nice. Yeah, blackberry and raspberry. Any of the bramble honeys are good.
Well, speaking of veterinarians, who do we have coming up today?
Well, Jeff, we got the people from the Honey Bee Veterinary Consortium with us today, and this is a group of veterinarians who have formed an organization to train themselves about bees and beekeeping, because they're getting calls from beekeepers that say, "I need your help. I got to have a prescription for an antibiotic." And today we've got Britteny Kyle and Allie, Mosel, the president and president-elect of this group, who are going to be with us and they're going to tell us what they do, how they do it, why they do it, and how we can work better together.
Oh, that's great. That's a big change in the beekeeping in the last few years is the need to get a prescription for terramycin. I remember going into the feed store and getting a little bag of TM25 and using that on the bees. You can't do that these days.
I know lots of people. I'm going to be honest. I have never put an antibiotic in a beehive. I've never had American foul brood. I've had European, but you can get away from European without an antibiotic. Yeah. But I've never had American foul brood. Knocking on wood a lot.
Yeah, the last hive I had with American foul brood, I just burned. So, I mean, I didn't even try to save it. That was long ago. But anyway, so it's going to be a good show to learn about how the veterinarians are working with us. Before we get there, We have something else coming up. We mentioned it last week. The 4th International Bee and Hive Monitoring Conference. It's going to be October 5th through 9th, and it's the last 3 conferences have been live there in Montana. But this year, of course, because of COVID, everything's going to be on Zoom. But they have 4 days of presentations and special topics about everything bee monitoring, bee tech. And it'll be a good show for those who are interested in that aspect of beekeeping.
And every time I talk to Jerry, he's got a couple of new people who've just kind of showed up. So it's getting better all the time.
Yeah, they have over 40 presenters. So each presenter, they're going to break them up into different sections, so you can find out what section you want to listen to. They'll talk for about 15 minutes and then have a panel discussion where you can, on Zoom, ask questions. So if you're interested and into bee monitoring and networking and tracking, all things techie related to honeybees, this will be a good conference for you to attend.
It is the wave of the future. There's no doubt about it.
I tell you, I like sitting here at the computer and going out and looking at my bees online to say, everything's looking fine.
Yeah.
It's good. So check out the website. We have a link on our website and in the show notes for the colony monitoring event on October 5th through 9th. Let's get into our interview with Allie and Britteny from the Honey Bee Veterinary Consortium. Hey, well, welcome, Allie and Britteny, to the Beekeeping Today podcast.
Thank you so much for having us. Hi.
Yeah, you bet.
Great to be here.
This is pretty special, Jeff. We have the president and the president-elect of the Honey Bee Veterinary Consortium with us today. And what we're going to do is we're going to talk about being a vet and being a honeybee vet and what it takes to do that and what beekeepers should be able to do and take advantage of this organization now that it exists and how to best use the facilities they have available to them. So I'm going to start with Britteny, who's the current president. And Britteny, tell us how you got to where you are right now relative to being a veterinarian and a beekeeper and all of the rest.
Great, sure. It's not a path that I sort of anticipated when I graduated from vet college. We didn't once discuss honeybees when I was there, but I graduated from the Ontario Veterinary College in 2009. And like a lot of my classmates, I went into small animal practice. Small animal being dogs, cats, and the occasional other little pocket pets. And I did general and emergency practice for a bunch of years. And then in 2018, I was on paternal leave with my youngest son. And I happened to stumble across an email in my inbox that said, come learn about honeybee veterinary medicine. And I said, what? That's a thing? And I was so fascinated. So I took the course, which was taught by Dr. Megan Milbrath, which, of course, if you've heard Megan talk about bees, you absolutely fall in love with them. And from that first lecture, I was hooked. And it just made a lot of sense to me. I was always fascinated by insects. In my undergrad, I did a lot of coursework in botany. And I thought, wow, this is such a cool opportunity to sort of explore this new field. Through studying bees, I learned about the antibiotic regulations and how veterinarians were starting to be incorporated into the field of apiculture. And like many veterinarians who really want to immerse themselves, I ran out and got a couple of hives, of course, and started keeping bees because that is one of the best ways to learn. Took some beekeeping courses as well. And I've basically just been studying bees on my own. And now I am planning on going back to do my master's in epidemiology with a focus on American foulbrood.
Wow. I have to tell you, we've had Megan on our show, so you certainly got a good start. And I'll tell you one other thing. There have been days when I've come home from the bee yard when I've had pocket pets in my bee suit. So I've never heard them called that, but with Megan, then you got a good background in the other classes that you've taken. Allie, how did you get to where you are?
Yeah, so similar to Brittany, I was not really expecting that I would ever be a honeybee vet. When I was in veterinary school, we also did not really have any courses about honeybees, but I graduated from the Tufts Cummings School of Veterinary Medicine in 2015. And then shortly after that, in 2016, I found a continuing education course up in Massachusetts for honeybee veterinary medicine, because that was going to be a thing starting in 2017 when the laws changed. So I went and took that course and absolutely fell in love. And that Christmas, my fiance bought me a beehive. And then we got started with bees after that. That spring was our first year, and loved it ever since. So I'm still practicing small animal medicine, so dogs and cats on the day-to-day, but then have my bees and have been learning all about beekeeping and honeybee medicine and everything ever since.
I say, what a romantic you have in your life to give you a beehive. How neat.
Yeah, I was going to say,
Awesome.
what would come down the Christmas tree that Christmas morning and find a beehive there? That would have been pretty amazing.
Well, it was great. The card, I opened it up and it had like 1,000 little cutout bees in it that just kind of went everywhere when I opened up the card. So it was fun.
That is funny. That is fun.
I don't know if he knew what he was getting into and how it would take over your life, right?
Absolutely not. But we both are loving it, and it's been a great journey getting to meet a lot of awesome people and learn a lot of new things about bees and beekeeping and just the whole industry of it.
Did I see that you're involved with that group in Detroit, Bees in the D?
Yes, I think you guys had them on here as well. But yeah, I'm their bee vet, and they've been doing a lot in Detroit and putting a lot of hives everywhere, doing a lot of outreach and teaching. So it's fun. It's fun working with them and learning from them and getting to help out.
Yeah, Detroit seems to have a big beekeeping community, so it's pretty amazing.
There are a lot of urban beekeepers in Detroit.
Yeah.
It's pretty neat.
Yeah, it's really cool. A shout out to Detroit.
So how did the Honey Bee Veterinary Consortium get started? I know I can see why it had to, just because when the law changed and it said you have to have a prescription for an antibiotic for any animal, and bees included, I can see suddenly there's beekeepers going, who do I go to? And there's veterinarians go, I don't want to go there. So how did you guys get it started?
Wait, before we go there real quick, I'm sorry to interrupt, but before we go there, so why is there a change now? I mean, because many of us started before there was this law, but now at some point there was a law change. Can someone talk about that? The before and after?
Yeah, so basically it all stems from the global concern regarding antimicrobial resistance. And we do know that is a crisis that we're facing right now, not only in veterinary medicine, but in human medicine as well. And so the government's in the United States first and then in Canada later made some changes to access to antibiotics so that it would require veterinary oversight. So what that meant is that the licensed products, which are mainly oxytetracycline and tylosin, that beekeepers could normally get from their bee supply companies, suddenly required a veterinarian to either write a prescription or a veterinary feed directive. And it kind of threw us together. I don't think either group saw it coming. So I have heard it referred to as an arranged marriage, so to speak. But I think it was interesting that a lot of veterinarians, I think, were really excited about it. It's something that we've seen veterinarians from all different backgrounds, whether it's small animal food production, working with cattle, equine veterinarians, exotic veterinarians that work with, things like snakes and birds and the pocket pets and stuff. So many of them came forward and wanted to learn about bees. and add that to their educational background. So it's been really cool to see, and I think a lot of vets are really thankful for the change.
Okay, thanks. So that gets us to Kim's question about the formation of the consortium. Yeah.
So like most great things in life, it basically happened as a discussion with some beer involved, and sort of our founding members were sitting around after having been at a continuing education conference for exotic animals. We're sitting around discussing the upcoming change to the veterinary feed directive law that would require veterinarians to provide oversight. And they said, hey, there's no real group for honeybees in veterinary medicine. We have, for every other species, we have veterinary groups that focus on that species, but there's nothing for honeybees. Maybe this is something we should do. So they agreed to form. And then independently, some of our other members had sort of formed a little group. Many of you have probably heard of Chris Cripps. He's a veterinarian in New York, but he was actually a bee inspector as well. So he had a lot of background in honeybees prior to the change. And he connected with another one of our members, and they sort of formed a group where they were putting together lists of veterinarians that would be willing to see bees. And the two groups found out about each other and merged and developed the Honey Bee Veterinary Consortium.
Just to make sure folks know, Chris Cripps is also one of the owners of Better Bee and an occasional sponsor of Beekeeping Today.
And currently sponsoring our guest co-host Kirsten Trainer's episodes and her interviews. So they're very active in the beekeeping.
Mm-hmm.
Good.
And he sponsors us as well. So we're very appreciative of Better Bee.
Yeah, absolutely. So every animal that needs an antibiotic now can't just get what the owner of the animal that needs an antibiotic can't just get can't get that chemical off the shelf anymore. Every antibiotic has to have your okay, essentially.
Not every antibiotic. So the government sort of classified antibiotics as whether they were medically important to human health or not. So something like fumagillin, which is used by beekeepers, or at least used to be, wouldn't be classified as a medically important antibiotic because it isn't used in human medicine at all. So that doesn't require veterinary oversight. But the antibiotics that are used in humans now do require for all.
So that would be terramycin.
Correct, and tylosin as well. And lincomycin, although I don't know anyone using that one.
What led to this, I don't know what to call it, change or improvement or change? Was there problems with antibiotics getting into human food?
Yeah, not necessarily in beekeeping per se. However, if antibiotics are used improperly or incorrectly or not at the right time or at the incorrect concentrations, we can see that it can get into the food that people consume. And so basically it's to make certain that antibiotics are being used correctly at the appropriate times so that it doesn't get into the food or it doesn't start creating this antibiotic resistance in people. So because, like Brittany was saying, we want it to be, it's oversight from veterinarians is necessary. We want to make certain that we're not creating resistance to where a person gets an infection that they would need that antibiotic, but that antibiotic is no longer functional for that sort of infection. And so basically, it's just there to help make certain someone's not, buying the terramycin and pouring an entire thing into a hive and getting it in the honey and getting it, into people's basically food that they eat as well.
Antimicrobial resistance can work in a couple of ways. One, where we don't want antibiotic residues in any of our food products. But it also works in that when bacteria develop resistance, they carry it on their genes. And a lot of times the bacteria, they very easily will swap their genes with other species of bacteria. So it can also travel that way. I like to share a story, so humor me for a moment, if you don't mind, that sort of shaped my impression of antimicrobial resistance. When I was a veterinary student, I had the opportunity to travel down to Florida, where I got to work at a marine mammal hospital for a couple of weeks. And we had a few Riso dolphins that stranded while I was there. And Riso dolphins, they're not like your typical bottlenose dolphins that are always around humans, and everywhere that humans are, you see bottlenose dolphins. Riso dolphins are deep sea dolphins, and they really don't like to interact much with people. But these 3 had stranded. It was 2 adults and a baby stranded on shore, and they were extremely sick with an E. coli infection. And that E. coli was resistant to 17 different antibiotics. So antimicrobial resistance is a worldwide problem, and it's in every species. It's not that it's just in bees. It's not that it's just in humans. It's everywhere.
Wow.
That certainly deserves some attention. There's no doubt about it. So how does a beekeeper establish a relationship with a vet? Do you make house calls?
A lot of us do. So one of the goals of the HBVC is to be able to provide beekeepers with resources to find a vet. So we have a database on our website, hbvc.org, where they can go on, log in, find a vet in their area, hopefully, or at least somewhere in their state who is willing to come out and do a hive call, where they'll inspect the hive with the owner of the hive, or the beekeeper themselves, and be able to determine what kind of antibiotics or medication or mite count is needed, and kind of determine what sort of medications are needed, and if a VFD is done. So on our website, beekeepers can just go on there and search the database and find a vet. And our goal is to hopefully have a lot more vets join that database in the near future, so that it's easier for beekeepers to find us and work with us.
Well, in Ohio, what happens is an inspector comes, takes a look at my hive, a county inspector or maybe a state inspector comes and looks at my hive, is strongly suspicious that I have American foul brood, takes a sample, sends it into the bee lab at Beltsville, it's tested there, and it comes back positive. So can I take that information and call up my vet, which is 120 miles away, and say, I got a confirmation from Beltsville that I have American foul brood. Can you write me a prescription?
I think that somewhat depends on location. So in the United States, veterinarians, our licenses are overseen by the FDA, the Food and Drug Administration. And the requirement is for establishing a relationship between a veterinarian, a beekeeping client, and a colony, that the veterinarian has to actually make a site visit and do a clinical examination. Once that's established, then it's not that every single time the veterinarian has to go out and look. It depends on the relationship, but they need that initial site visit in order to establish a relationship. I'm located in Canada, and it's a little bit different here. So where I am in Ontario, we don't require a site visit, so I could use that information. However, we have a burn requirement as well for AFB, so you wouldn't actually be calling me in that instance. But so it does vary a little bit place by place. You bring up a good point, though, and that is that the state apiary programs already do a lot of what veterinarians traditionally do with our other animals. And so one thing that I think veterinarians need to work on, and at HBVC, we're pretty passionate about working with the apiary programs and figuring out what's the best way that we can collaborate to make this as seamless and as easy as possible and as cost effective for the beekeepers.
So would you go then, and I'll go back to my example in Ohio. I went to your webpage, I took a look, the nearest vet is, I want to say 120 miles, somewhere, some long distance. And getting a one-to-one, having you come to my bee yard, and you're charging me mileage plus time, gets to be expensive. Could the veterinarian check in with the state bee inspector or the county inspector who took the sample and sent it in and say, is this what you saw? And do you believe that the Beltsville people got it right? I mean, can you fall back on that second level of information, or do you still have to come out and chat with the beekeeper?
Yeah, so in non-COVID times, we would need to come out to the bee yard to establish that it's called the VCPR, the veterinary client patient relationship. In COVID times, there have been some lifted regulations in terms of like telemedicine and telehealth, if we are able to do things without an in-person visit. So that may be something that, we could do it over Zoom or Skype or, FaceTime to be able to actually see the bee yard. One of the things that kind of, as Brittany was alluding to, is that we are trying to work with the state inspectors a little bit more to create this relationship so that we do have veterinarians in each state who know the bee inspectors, who have that relationship with them to make it a little bit easier to be able to get the VFD or the prescription to the beekeeper when they need it, when it's appropriate. And so the other thing, with there being the closest vet being so far away, that's where we're trying to create more veterinarians who are willing to see bees. And that's where, a lot of people will just call up their dog or cat veterinarian and be like, hey, I need this prescription for my bees. And they have no idea how to do it. But we're trying to, create educational events and conferences and webinars where veterinarians can learn about bees, so that the closest bee vet to you is not 120 miles away. So hopefully it's only, a max of 20 miles away. But we're also working with the veterinary schools that a lot of the schools are now starting to teach bee medicine courses, so that these new veterinarians graduating are going to have at least some knowledge of veterinary bee medicine and bee health, so that even if they are not beekeepers themselves or not super comfortable going out into a hive, they at least know kind of the background of what sort of things should be treated and how those things should be treated, so that there's more availability for beekeepers to find vets.
Hello, beekeepers. Your honeybees face a lot of challenges out there. Unbalanced food sources from monoculture crops, holding yards, drought, food shortages, antibiotics, pesticides, and pathogens like chalk brood. To overcome these challenges, your bees need the multiple bacteria that are in all nectars, pollens, and the environment. These bacteria aid honeybees' digestion and improve your honeybees' response and resilience to pesticides. Now you can help improve your honey colony health with a quick, easy, and safe-to-use product. Strong Microbial's Super DFM Honeybee uses naturally occurring bacteria to restore the healthy gut biome of your honeybees. Check them out today at www.strongmicrobials.com.
Well, you mentioned in the times of COVID. Could I take my cell phone to my bee yard and show you my bees in my bee yard and me? Is that something to establish a relationship? And then I can say, here's the frame of bees that I have, because I don't have a state or a county inspector. Take a look at this. Take a look at the symptoms, and you can see the snotty brood or whatever it is that I've got. Is that a legitimate? I don't want to say excuse. Is that a legitimate alternative?
Yeah, so for most states right now, we can do something like that. The veterinarian would still have to be licensed in your state. So it would still have to be, for you, Kim, a veterinarian in Ohio to be able to write that VFD for you. But creating that relationship can be done virtually right now. As far as I know, at this point, that is still allowable. I'm sure that will change a little bit. I don't know how much or how much that will change, if it will or not, once COVID's all done, hopefully. But it does allow us to be able to actually see things and hopefully treat remotely.
Is there a certification process that a veterinarian has to go through to receive the training, or at the end of this training, are they certified as a honeybee veterinarian?
There's nothing formal at this time. It's sort of, I call it a choose your own adventure right now for veterinarians, where the onus is all on us having the ethical responsibility of making sure we have enough education to be able to make treatment decisions for honeybees. But that's actually something that the Honey Bee Vet Consortium is looking at, because we do think it would be very helpful, one, for veterinarians to have more of a formal training path to follow, but two, also for beekeepers then to have some kind of assurance that the veterinarian does know about honeybees. And of course, if we are able to get more schools on board with teaching honeybee veterinary medicine at the veterinary schools, then new graduates wouldn't necessarily need certification programs, although it would definitely help them. But there would be some comfort that every new graduating veterinarian would at least know about honeybees.
That brings up a good point that I hadn't thought about. Does a veterinarian know what he's talking about or she's talking about when I call them up and say, I have a problem? I can see almost the shoe being on the other foot. Tell me about your beekeeping training and see if you can answer a few basic questions, then I can have some confidence that you're actually been schooled to some level of beekeeping. I can see where that might work. That probably would happen.
Oh, absolutely. And I would strongly encourage any beekeeper that's, looking for a veterinarian to help with their bees, that they do ask questions and they make sure that the veterinarian is comfortable and that they're comfortable with the veterinarian. As I've mentioned, I feel very strongly that there needs to be a team environment, and that is key in order to have proper treatment of any animal, whether it's a honeybee or a horse or a dog. You need to have a comfort level between the veterinarian and the client. And so I would encourage beekeepers to ask questions and say, what do you know about bees? What education have you gotten on bees? And I think most veterinarians would be quite upfront and forthcoming with their comfort level. I think one hesitation we have, and the reason why we don't have more veterinarians in our database, is because as veterinarians, we do take it very seriously how we market ourselves and what we claim that we know about. So I think some of our vets do know about bees, but they're not quite comfortable enough to say fully, yes, I can treat them. I'm ready to. So,
how many veterinarians are in the consortium?
Currently, we have 341 members. It's not 100% veterinarians. It does also include other interested parties that are educated in like entomology, or some of the state apiary programs have had members sign up and become members.
So all of those members, you've got, I want to say, I went to your webpage, you've got, 60 or 70 listed on your webpage, broken down by state, and you got 340 some members. 60 of them are on your webpage. Are any of those 350 eligible to call?
Well, they haven't identified. So to be on our website in our database for Find a Vet, they have to identify themselves as being willing to treat honeybees. So the members that aren't on there have not chosen to identify themselves that way.
Okay.
So we can't release their information, unfortunately, without their consent.
Well, Jeff, if you're going to have a problem, live in North Carolina, because they got a dozen vets signed up in that state.
Well, that's where the consortium started. So we do have a pretty strong representation in North Carolina.
And you and I have 2 each. So
I think it's a career opportunity.
There you go.
That's one of the things that, since this is such a new venture for veterinarians to be required in the bee yard, it's something that I expect we're going to see a lot more veterinarians in the future that are interested in bees and are excited to treat bees and are knowledgeable about bees and willing to treat them. But it's just kind of, we're still in the, I feel like we're still in the toddler stage of teaching everybody everything and getting people interested and excited about it. And so that's something where, Brittany was talking about the trust with your veterinarian and your beekeeper, that relationship. It's something that us as vets, we're also learning about bees and how to be beekeepers. And so, it's going both ways. We want to learn, we want to be part of the, beekeeping journey. And, our goal, if we can learn something from the beekeeper, that's great as well. We want to be there to be able to help, but we also want to learn. And, it's going to be a continuous journey on both sides, and trying to get a lot more vets who are interested and knowledgeable about bees. Definitely, I see it definitely expanding a lot in the near future.
I was just going to add that if you are in a location where you can't find a veterinarian willing to see bees, you can certainly call your regular veterinarian if you have one, or veterinarians in your area, and talk about how you can get them comfortable with treating bees, and maybe invite them out to see your bee yard and to learn a bit. You may spark some interest and start them on a journey of learning about bees. You never know.
Well, there's a thought.
Invite them to a bee meeting. That would be good too.
There you go.
Well, before COVID times.
Yes.
When there were still bee meetings. There's a couple of products on the market that I'm wondering if your veterinarians can use, should use, don't want to use. There's the Vita test kits for European foul brood and American foul brood. And are they encouraged, discouraged, used? How do they fit in the program?
Yeah, I recommend them. I think they're great. The data I've seen is that they are quite sensitive and specific. And so I do think they make a very good field test. And they certainly do help in getting a confirmed diagnosis, which a lot of veterinarians feel is very important, to not just rely on clinical signs. That's part of our sort of training in veterinary school. So I do like them myself. And last year, every year we do put on an annual conference. And last year we actually were able to get a donation of the test kits for our advanced lab. And all of our veterinarians got a chance to actually use them on some hives, which actually we did have EFB positive hives. So that was an interesting opportunity for those veterinarians to get to see and try it out. Allie, do you have an opinion to share too about?
Yeah, no, it's definitely, I think they're quite accurate, and that may be something, I was just thinking with virtual, if we're doing something over Skype or Zoom or whatnot, that you can show me a picture of your frame, you can show me your matchstick test, and then you can also show me I got this positive result on the snap test. So all of that can definitely be helpful and beneficial to get that diagnosis, and then be able to make the veterinarian feel a lot more comfortable on treatment options, and know that what we're giving you is the right thing, basically.
Do you encourage, like I said, in Ohio, before we have a certain diagnosis of, say, either of the foul broods, we send it to the Beltsville lab, and that confirms it? How do I want to ask this question? Is that a requirement if you have that option in every state? Any state? Some states?
So the decision on sending something for testing in terms of a veterinary requirement would be up to the individual veterinarian. I myself really like the testing because my interest is ultimately in epidemiology. So I like that, we send it somewhere where numbers are pooled and we collect data. Also, correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe they also do resistance testing. So they're checking to see if there's any resistance in the bacteria to the antibiotics that are commonly used in beekeeping. I think that's standard practice at Beltsville. I know it is up here in Ontario where we would send our samples. But that's good data to have. And I understand that testing at the Beltsville lab is free. So
Yes.
I don't know why anyone would not want to do it other than time. The lateral flow devices are nice because they're so quick that you get the results right away. I imagine waiting on test results from Belts View sometimes may be a little cumbersome to wait.
Well, I guess I'm just looking at being sure on both sides. If you're establishing a relationship with a veterinarian or the other way with a beekeeper, I've done the test, I've looked at the comb, I sent it someplace else. They all came back telling me that what I thought was wrong. Now I am very confident in writing a prescription for an antibiotic for your beehive.
Exactly.
And I, as a beekeeper, am very, very confident in applying it according to the label, so that my honey won't become contaminated. So it makes it easy on both sides of the equation when those are done on both sides, I think. And I'll add one more, Jeff. I think every veterinarian should be familiar with the BMD.
Yeah, that's true.
So that I can go to a bee yard as a veterinarian and I can look at something and I don't know what it is. And then I've got the BMD there that I can pretty much sort it out and say, yes, this is bad, or no, this isn't as bad as I thought it was. It's something else. So you've got the Vita tests, you got BMD, you've got Beltsville Bee Lab, you've got a lot of ammunition behind you as a veterinarian to make a good decision. So a beekeeper, you should be suggesting that all three of those avenues be taken before you have to do something. I think both sides can come at it all ways.
Definitely.
So you mentioned that there are training opportunities, webinars, and you, on your website, you mentioned there's a conference coming up. You want to talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, so the past 2 years, we've had in-person conferences for veterinarians. Those have actually been in North Carolina, which is probably also why there's more vets there that are willing to see bees. But they've been multi-day conferences where veterinarians can come in and take a beginner track. So for someone who's never done anything with bees, to an advanced track where they're pretty comfortable but want to learn a little bit more about the diseases and whatnot that we treat. This year, we were originally planning on having an in-person conference. We were going to change it, actually, moving it to Michigan State University, but with COVID, we had to turn it into a virtual conference. So it's now going to be online. We have it on 4 different days. So September 21st, 22nd, 28th, and 29th. Each of those nights is going to be from 8 to 10 p.m. And we've got some pretty great speakers lined up. We have Dr. Jamie Ellis, Dr. Samuel Ramsey, Dr. Katie Lee, and Dr. Jennifer Zeruda. Which I think you've had most of them actually on the podcast too. So they're really great speakers. They're wonderful, scientists, researchers. They are going to be speaking all about different avenues in medicine, beekeeping, the diseases, and how we treat them. And so having it online this year, we are not just limiting it to veterinarians. It's now we're able to open it up to anyone who's interested in honeybees, in honeybee medicine, in just these awesome speakers, or just, insects in general, pollinators, whatnot. So anyone can sign up for it.
So it's 3 evenings. And how much is that?
Sorry, it's 4 evenings.
4?
And yes. And so we do have pricing for all 4 webinars. It would be $100, and the registration would be through our website. There is a member discount for our HBVC members that get 20% off. But if you're not a member, you can still register. There's an option to choose non-member on the registration form. And as Allie said, we're not limited by the size of our lecture hall this year. So we think it's a great opportunity, and we're pretty proud of the speakers that we're able to get. I think they are top-notch speakers, and I think it shows how serious we take the education portion of our organization, that we really do want to get the best resources out to our veterinarians. And we'd be thrilled if anyone wants to join us on those 4 evenings.
Sounds like a great opportunity.
You've said one of the speakers is going to be Jamie Ellis, and Jamie Ellis is University of Florida, is the BMD people to talk to. You got to convince him to talk a little bit about that to get people aware of how to use it and when to use it.
Well, the second hour of his webinar will be all on the resources that he recommends for veterinarians. So when you're out in the field and you're faced with a problem and you don't have someone like Jamie Ellis to call, you actually know where to look. So
that's good.
Yeah,
cover a lot of that kind of stuff.
Yep. What have we missed? What don't we know about the Honey Bee Veterinary Consortium?
I don't know. I think we covered a lot of it. I think there's a lot more veterinarians out there who are interested and willing to learn, and we want to be there. We want to help. We want to do what we can and be available to beekeepers, and
I think it's a great program, a great resource for veterinarians and beekeepers alike. It's good to pull it together and make it happen.
It's I get pretty excited about the fact that we're educating our veterinarians not just on how to write a VFD or a prescription and the antibiotics and the bacterial diseases, but we try to cover all of it. And of course, Varroa is always one of our major focuses. And I think I hope that beekeepers and people in the industry would be excited by the fact that, the more of us that can come together working on the same problem, the more likely we can help to solve it. And I think veterinarians are really eager and passionate about wanting to help and wanting to make a difference.
I would have to agree to that.
Jeff, I think we've got Britteny Kyle and Allie Mosel, the president and president-elect of the Honey Bee Veterinary Consortium. I want to thank both of you for being here tonight and sharing what you know, and I encourage people to look at your webpage and to seriously consider virtually attending your conference. I think it'll be beneficial for everybody.
Absolutely.
Great. Thank you so much for having us.
Well, thank you for being here. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.
Hey, that was a really good interview with Allie and Britteny. I think that they're going to be doing a lot of work here in these coming years.
Well, they're going to have to, because beekeepers aren't going to let them sit still. And one of the things that was talked about was inviting your local vet out to your bee yard to give him an opportunity to see what's going on, how it works, and what they need to do. And there's classes that they can take. This group is offering classes, but the resources that a vet has available just right now. They've got the BMD from the University of Florida. We had Jamie on for that. They can take samples and send them to Beltsville and confirm their cases. And then they've got the Vita tests, which can do it right in the bee yard. So between taking classes and those other three resources, I think vets can step up pretty fast here, and beekeepers working with them can make it work.
I do too. I think it's a great opportunity for all involved. There's a lot for them to learn. I'm glad that they're taking it seriously and forming a group to study what they need to do.
It is the way of the future.
It is. Well, that about wraps it up for this podcast. Before we go, I want to encourage our listeners to rate us 5 stars in Apple Podcasts, wherever you download and stream the show. Your vote helps other beekeepers find us quicker. Even better, write a review and let us know what you like. As always, we thank Bee Culture, the magazine for American beekeeping, for their continued support of Beekeeping Today podcast. We want to thank our regular episode sponsor, Global Patties. Check them out at www.globalpatties.com and look at all the new information they have on their updated website. We also want to thank Strong Microbial for becoming the latest supporter of the podcast. Check out their probiotic line at www.strongmicrobials.com. And finally, we want to thank you, the Beekeeping Today podcast listener, for joining us on this show. Feel free to send us questions and comments at questions@beekeepingtodaypodcast.com. We'd love to hear from you. Anything else, Tim?
Yeah, it's Labor Day, Jeff. I'm going to take the rest of the day off.
That's good. Put your feet up and don't even look at the computer screen.
Take it easy.
Take care.